right, 13 past 5 o'clock hour, as we do every Tuesday, and especially during the NFL season, which, by the way, is right around the corner. We always have to welcome in our good friend, Lloyd Vance, who does a wonderful job covering the NFL senior writer, researcher, historian, PFWA award winner, and, of course, former NFL Network, ESPN contributor. We'll hold off on some of the tweets, and we'll get into some football talk with our guy, Lloyd Vance, on a Tuesday with Vance's View on 1490 Sports Betting Radio. What's going on, pal?
Doing good, Q, man. It was a crazy day. My phone was just buzzing like crazy because it's cut day around the NFL.
Yeah, it's crazy. It is. It's absolutely crazy what's going on. And, all right, let's start in our backyard first with the Philadelphia Eagles, trimming that roster as every team had to by 4 o'clock, getting from 80 to 53. A couple running backs cut, Fulgham cut. I think one of the big stories is the fact that they are actively trying to trade Zach Ertz, and right away the Buffalo Bills come to mind. What are you hearing? What's the latest on Ertz and the Eagles?
Yeah, the Eagles are trying to get out from underneath that contract. Obviously, they have Goddard there, and they believe he could be a guy that can step forward and take over for Ertz. And they've been trying for quite some time, going back to the draft, to get rid of Zach Ertz. So there's a couple teams, as you said, that may be looking at him, maybe the Buffalo Bills, maybe a team out west. That's where he's from originally. But they'd really like to kind of move on from him and then go from there. I did see that they did cut Richard Rodgers, but obviously they would probably bring him back if they're able to trade Zach Ertz. So still a lot of moving parts until we get to week 1, and that may be one of the moves out there.
And Sirianni came out today and basically the worst-kept secret saying that Jalen Hurts was going to be named the starter. But yet, over the weekend, surprising move that the Philadelphia Eagles trade for Gardner Minshew, who people forget he's only 24, 25, a lot of football life left, trains very hard, gets there early from my accounts in Jacksonville early, stays late, watches film. The guy can play a little bit. Do you think that move was designed to push Jalen Hurts, knowing that Flacco really is maybe right now number 3 at best, and they also had to release Nick Mullins? What's your thoughts on the Gardner Minshew move by the Birds?
Yes, they wanted to get a young quarterback in there, a developmental type, that could push Jalen Hurts. I'm still not sure Hurts is their guy. Let's not forget, he started only about 4 games last year, and then they did that whole pulling thing in the last game of the season. Minshew, a guy that really excited the Jacksonville Jaguars with his style of play, and yes, he did put some risks sometimes with the football, but he's a guy that can get the job done, and he will push Jalen Hurts. And to me, he's already pushed Joe Flacco aside. Unfortunately, Joe, at this time in his career, I just don't see much tread left on the tire, so we're going to see how this works out.
No, either do I. Fitzpatrick was named the starter in Washington. I don't really think this is a surprise, to be quite honest. I think that their defensive front, their defensive line is the best in football, so you're probably not going to have Fitz go out there and throw 35 times in a game, even though he would love to. The more he throws, the more he's prone to picks and interceptions. But how about what's going on in Washington, naming Fitzpatrick the starter?
Yes, Q, and that was a quarterback battle that I didn't really think was won. All along, Ryan Fitzpatrick seemed to be their guy. Taylor Heineke had that great game in a loss to the Bucs last year in the playoffs. Everybody was talking about that, but he's still a young quarterback that makes mistakes. Fitz is going to make the big plays as needed, and with the weapons around him that you were pointing out, particularly Terry McLaurin at the wide receiver position, I'm expecting a lot from that offense to put up a lot of points this season. So, not surprising he was their guy, and they're going to be a dangerous team.
No, I agree. I still think Dallas Cowboy fans have to, I think, temper their optimism, and I think there's got to be a little cause or even a lot of cause for concern, man, because now you get rid of your backup quarterbacks. Now you basically promote one of them that is basically had a cup of coffee in the NFL, and you're relying on Dak Prescott to be healthy throughout 17 weeks, 18 weeks, 17 games. I'll tell you, man, if he goes down, they are screwed. And I'm wondering, do you think with the release of Cam Newton, which we'll get into, do you think Dallas will look for a backup quarterback for Dak Prescott?
Yeah, if they're smart, they will, because paper doesn't win anything. Yes, they have all these big names, and there's all the hype around a team with Hard Knocks surrounding them, but they have to get it done. And let's face it, Jerry Jones is putting a lot of pressure on his organization because he's getting up there in age. He wants to win right now. He's put a lot of resources in his team, paid a lot of guys front-line contracts, particularly his offensive line. He's put a lot of money into that, and Dak Prescott has got to deliver as well. He gave him that $40 million contract. So he's a guy coming off an injury. You do have to worry. Is he going to be projected? Is he going to be ready? And the shoulder, let's not forget, was a little tender early in training camp. So, Cooper Rush being his only backup, I think they will make a move and try to bring somebody in eventually.
You saw the Giants still shuffling that offensive line, making some moves, making a trade here and there, making a trade with the Ravens. I mean, it tells me they still have not addressed that offensive line. I went back and I watched the preseason game against New England. Same mistakes, pocket collapsing, Jones running out of pocket, throws across his body, horrible red zone pick, and then he comes back, and then he turns around, and he throws a nice touchdown pass later on. I mean, still, to me, it's just going to come down to that offensive line play for the Giants, and I still don't believe they've addressed it.
Yes, and that's a huge key for them, and it all goes back to picking Andrew Thomas, number one. It was kind of a reach last year, and he came in out of shape, and he has just not been that cornerstone left tackle that they need. And, let's face it, with Saquon coming back from a pretty bad knee injury, they need him to step up to take some of the heat off of Daniel Jones because, as you were saying, he is prone to make some mistakes out there. So a lot of weapons on his team, guys rehabbing, but that offensive line is a huge question mark for the Giants team, and they're going to have to clean it up by week one.
All right, we'll go around the league. So we touched a little bit on the NFCs, and we're still waiting to see what's going to happen with Ingram and that calf injury. Cam Newton released. There's so many theories out right now, right? Obviously, maybe at this point in his career, he is always going to be relegated to a backup. He never recovered from that Super Bowl loss. 2015 was the pinnacle MVP season for him. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. Do you believe there's theories floating around that Mac Jones was always going to be the starter? There's another theory that Belichick, who kept pushing and advocating for players to get vaccinated, and Cam Newton was against it, decides, you know what, I don't need this guy to get players sick and on the COVID list so they can't play on a Sunday, so we're going to get them out of there? Or do you also believe that the New England Patriots has decided we're ripping the Band-Aid off, we're going to go young, we understand we'll have some growing pains, Cam Newton was the bridge, and now we just have to move on from him?
Yeah, Q, I'd have to agree with a couple of theories that you're throwing out there, particularly Mac Jones. Let's face it, he's a young man. They invested a first-round draft pick in him. Belichick, very close to Nick Saban, his college coach, knew what he was getting. He knew he was going to get a young man in there that was ready to take control of the team, and he's going to get his opportunity. And he played pretty well in the preseason, showed that he was willing to be a leader of this unit and kind of eat some humble pie coming in there as the big-time college quarterback. With Cam Newton, I think the vaccination point that you brought up is huge because the NFL is really pushing to get that 100% vaccination. And you have a couple quarterbacks out there, particularly Kirk Cousins, Lamar Jackson, as well as Cam Newton, that just have not been vaccinated. And teams are worrying about losing whole game checks and forfeiting games. And it's just something that could tear apart a locker room. So I think that definitely played in a factor. Because let's not forget, he messed up one of the protocols a couple weeks, like in the past 2 weeks or so, and he had to miss 5 days. So I think Belichick thought at Cam Newton's age and the way the team was playing around him, why not make the change to Mac Jones, and the young guy is the future for them.
Very interesting. Look, I mean, these organizations have to do what is best for them at the end of the day, and you know what's going to happen. There's going to be a player look what's going on in Indianapolis. I mean, they're killing. They are flat out killing Carson Wentz right now. And this guy hasn't even taken a meaningful snap. Now, if you guys are just tuning in, Wentz along with two other players, were put on the COVID-19 list. And I'll tell you, I mean, you almost – I think this is it for Carson Wentz. I think he is under an enormous amount of pressure to succeed and perform well and to get the Colts in the playoffs. Anything less, I can see the Colts moving on from Carson Wentz after one season. That's how much I think he is under the microscope. I would say 2 to 3 player in the league, in the entire league, who's really under the microscope, and all the pressure's on him.
Sure, there's a lot riding on a season for Carson Wentz. Let's not forget the Eagles are paying a good portion of that contract. They're still taking a big hit in dead cap money, and easily I think the Colts could probably get out of some of that money that was pushed forward when they traded for Carson Wentz. And as you were saying, after the foot injury, you hope to get him on the field right away, and he gets this close contact situation with COVID, and now he's got to sit out. And preparation's got to begin because they're going to open the season with Seattle. That's a very tough team. Everybody expecting Indy to win. Let's face it, a pretty weak AFC South, but with all these injuries and the COVID situation, there's just a lot going on around this team. I also heard T.Y. Hilton's going to be out with a neck injury for them. So, a lot going on, and Wentz was being looked upon to come in and be the leader, get that second chance, and show that he wasn't as bad as he was last year for the Eagles.
Which scares the bejeebises out of me from a betting standpoint, by the way, because we blink, it's going to be September 9th, Dallas and Tampa Bay, which the Cowboys are going to get smacked. But in any event, you look around the NFL with some of these games, and I want to win some shekels. I got to back my play here. I can't hedge it, and I'm just worried a little bit. I mean, and now you got players, a bunch of players, John Brown, get me out of here. I want my release. I mean, it is really, it's bizarre. The Beasley situation as well. And how about this? Josh Allen is the longest tenured quarterback in the AFC East. You can file that one away.
Yeah, it's crazy. And most of the good teams are just making a few minor changes on their roster, at the bottom of their roster. But they have their set starters, and when you're seeing teams bringing guys at the last minute,
not good.
You're going to see you'll see a lot of veterans sign week 2 after week 1 contracts aren't guaranteed. That just shows you that these teams are kind of desperate, and some of these coaches are on the hot seat. They're looking for an answer. You look at the Chicago Bears; they're trying to find an answer for their offensive line. They just got a mess there. They have a lot of injuries on their offensive line, and Nagy's on a hot seat. So they're just an example of one team, but you're seeing a lot of waiver wire movement for these teams that are searching for answers.
Yeah, and we're also going to see these young quarterbacks. Maybe we see them sooner rather than later. And you mentioned the Chicago Bears, Fields. You mentioned, we've talked about this. We know the Jets are going to throw out Wilson. We talked about Trevor Lawrence now, right, in that shoddy offensive line, no running back. Now you trade Gardner Minshew. I mean, you're kind of leaving the cupboard bare just in case if Trevor Lawrence goes down.
Yes, and over and over I try to give Urban Meyer the benefit of the doubt, but it's just so tough for these college coaches coming into the NFL. It's a totally different game, and he really is not helping himself out by not having a competent backup because, guys get hurt very easily, and he's had some missteps already, and this is one of them. So, I think it's going to be a tough year for Jacksonville. You talk about that offensive line. They lose Etienne, who was one of their other number 1 draft picks, and it's a situation where a lot's going to be placed on Trevor Lawrence's shoulders, and we'll see if he can handle it.
Yeah. Who'd you give the game balls to, your final preseason edition of Game Balls before the season starts?
Yeah, I gave the game ball to the Baltimore Ravens. They won their 20th straight game, and it just shows you the preseason is important to them. Unfortunately, they lose Dobbins, their running back, and they're going to have to rebuild from there. But they won 37-3 over Washington, so they get the game ball.
All right, season's right around the corner. Are you looking at, when you look at the NFL as a whole right now, and we kind of have an idea of the usual suspects, these playoff teams, and everything going on, give me one team right now and one coach that you believe before the season starts, already the handwriting's on the wall for that organization, that head coach, meaning if they don't get it done this year, it might never happen, or for that head coach, he's going to be out of a job?
Yeah, Q, the one team I really have bullseye on in terms of the hot seat is Vic Fangio with the Denver Broncos, a defensive-minded coach in his third season, has not made the playoffs yet, and they're starting at the Giants, at Jacksonville, and then they host the Jets. So some winnable games there, and they got to come out strong. We'll see if Teddy Bridgewater is the right guy for the job. Drew Lock obviously wasn't. They benched him. A lot of talent on the offensive side, and defensively, they did a really good job in the draft. So a lot of pressure on the Denver Broncos.
Interesting. Yeah, they went with Surtain in the 9th pick. They drafted the kid Williams out of North Carolina in the 2nd round. They helped the line. They added a couple safeties as well. That's not a bad pick, man. I'm thinking about it. They open against the Giants. They're actually favored in that game. Then they go on the road against Jacksonville. They come home against the Jets and the Ravens. How about Pittsburgh? Do you think this is you think this is Ben's last stand in Pittsburgh?
I do, Q. He's 39 years old. He just looked his age in the playoffs. Just was not driving the football down the field, and the Browns were all over him. So I know Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. He always hangs his hat on that. But there's always going to be some pressure around the Steelers because they've been such a winning organization. They're bringing in Najee, obviously, to try to help that running game, rebuild that offensive line with those youngsters coming in because they got rid of 3 of their offensive linemen. So it's a tough situation for them, but they have the defense. They need to get the T.J. Watt contract situation handled because, as we know, he's there, but he's unhappy.
All right, let's save the last one, the best one, for the last one. So Jeff Darlington just tweeted out that he was told Dolphins coach Brian Flores just addressed his team regarding recent reports tying Miami to a possible trade for Deshaun Watson. Sources say he told players and staff that Tua Tagovailoa is, quote, our quarterback, in a brief but poignant endorsement of the quarterback. Again, I guess that tweet isn't intended to dispute any reporting done by Charles Robinson, who's kind of going back and forth with pretty much everyone. And Charles is a pretty reputable guy. Is this basically a coach saying, look, I'm standing up with you guys. I'm endorsing the quarterback. I'm not going to kind of navigate through this press conference. Enough is enough. Or do you still believe to a man the Dolphins are going to try to work hard to make a trade for Watson?
I still believe where there's smoke, there's fire. And they've been trying over and over again. Chris Greer is their general manager down there with the Miami Dolphins. And I'm sure he's calling it over to the Texans to see what it will take. Obviously, the legal situation has everything up in the air with Texas, but you're not going to see Deshaun Watson ever play for them. And it just shows over and over again, whether it was Fitzpatrick starting those games or just the belief of Brian Flores and Tua is just not there. And you've seen that he didn't draft him. So, it's a situation he kind of inherited him, but he wants to build a quarterback that's going to be able to make some timely throws and Tua, just that arm strength is always a question mark.
I tend to agree with you. I'm a huge Tua fan. I like the kid. I like what he stands for. I can't will a player to succeed, but you almost get the sense like, come on, man. If Houston is like, get this guy out of town, what do you want for him in return? How can you – again, this is like you said, we got to wait for the NFL to make a ruling, right, or really to see the case – how it unfolds. But my point is, if you're the Miami Dolphins, Watson, issues aside, is a ridiculous – I mean, he's an MVP type of quarterback, an upgrade over Tua, times 10. And I'm just wondering if this is just some of these beat guys trying to push a certain narrative that it's Tua. Because I went back, and I don't know if you follow Charles Robinson, if you looked at some of the stuff that he tweeted, but again, he was, the fact that he said Miami's a front runner in trade discussions, the Texans are seeking 3 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks in negotiations. I also think they mentioned 2 as well. I kind of, I take what he says not even with a grain of salt. I think he's extremely reputable, and I don't really question it because he doesn't have any reason to kind of push any type of narrative, so to speak. But again, you know, he's also saying ultimately, you know, they like Tua, you know, but again, it's you know, you have an opportunity to make a move. You make a move, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, too. You're right, Q. And I've known Charles a while from the Pro Football Writers Association, very reputable guy. And in his situation, let's face it, if you're driving a Nissan and somebody's offering you a Mercedes-Benz, you know, you're going to go in that dealership and take a look, and that's what Watson is compared to Tua. And it's a situation where if all the legal stuff shakes out, and I don't think the NFL is going to rule on anything anytime soon. It just does not. It just seems like they're just dragging their feet on it. That he will be eligible to play, and Houston said they won't play him, but if he's eligible to play and somebody wants him, why wouldn't Houston make that deal and try to improve probably one of the worst teams in the league?
Interesting. A lot of stuff to digest. We will do it again on Tuesday, another edition of Vance's View, and then we blink. We actually get set for a little real football. How's that sitting with you?
I'm getting excited for week one, and you know, now that the rosters are going to come together and everything is just excitement around the league. You're going to see everybody talking about their fantasy teams and how their team is the best team in the league.
Yeah, well, I'm only interested in putting a little coin in my pocket. You guys can win those.
That too.
Those fantasy championships. All right, pal. I always appreciate you. We'll talk next week.
All right, Q. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. There you have it. Lloyd Vance, great stuff as always. 5:34. Quick timeout.